Good evening, everybody. Welcome to episode 6 of the Grognard Grumbles. I'm your host with the most, Cody Broussard, and I'm once again joined by one of our co-hosts, Chase Green, and we are joined by a little unknown legend, but still legendary, Darrold Wagner. Darrold, how you doing tonight?
And people may know me better as D. Daniel Wagner. That's the name which I wrote most of my Dungeons & Dragons stuff under.
Okay. Good deal. Chase, how you doing?
Doing pretty good.
Unfortunately, our other intrepid co-host, Dave Ferguson, could not join us tonight. He's got a bit of a family situation going on. I just want to let everybody know he can't make it, and everybody in the old school community, please keep him in your thoughts and prayers. I also want to give a quick shout out, give credit where credit is due, to the Old School Dungeons & Dragons Facebook group and Discord. If you guys have not checked out the community, go check them out. There is a little bit of an entrance exam, but if you make it, it is very worth it. It is one of the best old school communities on the internet, in my opinion. Great group of guys, and the administrator there, Dwayne Cole, does a great job. And it is the home base of the Grognard Gamers and the Grognard Grumbles podcast. So go check them out. I'll put the link in the description below. But without further ado, Darrold, welcome to the podcast. Anytime I have somebody new on the podcast, I like to let them tell us their story about how they got into gaming and anything else they want to tell us. So without further ado, Darrold, how'd you get into gaming?
So it was in high school. We used to play war games, tactics, Stalingrad, stuff like that. I belonged to the chess club to start off with. Then we played war games, and then we were playing miniatures games, Napoleonic miniatures, and Ancients miniatures. My friend Thomas Coveney III answered advertisement, got one of the first copies of the original Dungeons & Dragons.
What year was that, Darrold? When you first got into wargaming?
When I first started wargaming, I think that would be 1969, 1970, something like that.
Okay. And so you got a hold of Dungeons & Dragons right as it first came out?
Right as it first came out, yes. So
awesome.
Yeah, that was interesting, and for a while, and having a great old time.
Right.
I think I actually had the first dungeon on the West Coast.
Oh, really?
Yes, myself and Dale Doan both drew up a dungeon, but mine was played first. As far as I know, I had the first dungeon on the West Coast.
Very cool.
Possibly the first dungeon outside of the original. But it'd be by days. You understand? I mean, I'm sure other people jumped into this really quickly.
Right.
We were playing this like solidly, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We're playing like played like 44 hours over a 2.5 day weekend. Just constantly. He did a lot of house rules and stuff like that, because the original 3-volume set wasn't really set up for. It wasn't really a complete set of rules. You needed house rules for the 3-volume set.
Yeah, you certainly do. Yeah. So going back for just a minute, you were talking about when you first got into D&D. Of course, we had another guest on here, Joe Collins, a couple weeks ago, and he started around the same time you did. He started wargaming in the 60s, and then he got discovered Dungeons & Dragons, when it came out in 74. And it's interesting to talk to the old wargamers that transition into role-playing, because we're talking about a brand new concept altogether, something that really changed and revolutionized the world, media altogether, right? And so what was y'all's first impressions as wargamers being introduced to this completely new concept?
Yes. the thing is, the whole thing about levels and everything was totally, utterly, that's totally unique to Dungeons and Dragons. And same thing is with classes. But
Right.
we would do things like we'd have a little bit of a backstory for, say, our knight character in a jousting game. We would, a coat of arms and stuff. And that was all, normal to do that back in those days. And so there'd be a little role playing going on. Nothing like Dungeons and Dragons did, where you'd level up and you get more powerful, you get experience points, treasure, all that sort of stuff. Basically, you might have a general or a knight or a dueler, and you do a little background for him, maybe a coat of arms. So the transition wasn't radical, but it was certainly there.
Right. So that's interesting, and I've heard this from a lot of old wargamers, is that they were kind of already. I think this revolution of role playing games had existed for quite some time before Dungeons and Dragons. People just weren't fully implementing, going the next step, right?
Yeah, it was kind of bubbling under the surface.
Right.
And it's interesting to hear you say that too. It kind of confirms my suspicions on that. So did your whole wargaming group seem to accept the idea of Dungeons and Dragons and role playing games from the get go? Or
A couple guys just weren't into the whole role playing fantasy thing. They just wanted to do war games and miniatures games, so it wasn't entirely accepted and by the entire community. And some of the guys played a little bit, then dropped out.
Right.
But in general, actually, it's mostly us, I'm going to say younger guys who was into it. By really young guys, but I mean, now you would consider us older guys. I'm in my 60s and stuff, but anyone more than a year older than me just wasn't into it that much.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I think that's with any new thing that comes around, right? The previous generation kind of usually doesn't take to it.
Right.
So did you guys understand did you immediately grasp the concept of what this game was, or did you try to approach it like a war game initially?
Oh, we got it immediately. As I said, we actually had been playing this interesting game where you play a knight and you have a joust, and you write down where you're going to hit him with your lance on his helmet, wherever, and then he picks where he's going to hit you, and then you match the two, and that tells where you're going to be outed or your lance is going to break, whatever. And the game encouraged you to up a coat of arms and a background for your character.
Yeah.
So we all did that. And Dungeons and Dragons did it to a depth unheard of. More than just a one paragraph background and a coat of arms. We had statistics and backstory and levels and classes and treasure and magic words and all that sort of stuff. It was just amazing escape.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you got me really intrigued because I'm actually a big even though I'm a big role player and a big D&D enthusiast, I'm also a really big military war games enthusiast. I still play a lot of miniature games and war games. You kind of have me a little intrigued by this. I don't mean to go way off left field here, but you got me intrigued by this jousting game. Were you guys making up rules for this jousting tournament game?
Tiny little pamphlet put out, with a game in it, and in the back it had a little section on ranks, and then a little section on heraldry. what the rules of heraldry were and how to make up a coat of arms. There's little filler stuff at the back. And, a lot of people painted their own little figure for it, with their little coat of arms on it and stuff. Because we had all those knight figures anyway for 25 millimeter war games.
Right.
So just, painting one of them up as you. I think it's still around. I've heard people in the SCA playing that game.
Really? Yeah.
Because it's just really just all the rules can be put on like a card.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a new miniatures game coming out, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. But it's basically the same thing what you're talking about. It's a role-playing miniatures game where you make up a knight and you play in tournaments and you actually level up your character and you go through you do jousting and sword and shield fights and stuff. It sounded really awesome. Anyways, yeah, that kind of thing has always intrigued me. It was interesting to hear you talk about that because I think those kind of things, as you were saying, Darrold, were kind of the beginnings, the beginning rumblings of what role playing became.
Right.
And it's interesting to hear you say that because I've heard it from a lot of groups playing in the late '60s, early '70s. They were doing these kind of experiments. Of course, Dave Wesley's group being the most famous because that's really where this, the Dungeons and Dragons revolution kind of birthed out of. But it's interesting to hear that from just about every wargamer I talked to back then. They were all doing these kind of role playing experiments.
Right. And I had I had a character for our 30 millimeter Napoleonics game. Again, you just drop a little bit, just something to add a little depth to it. But the whole idea of leveling and all that sort of stuff never came out.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting now in wargaming. A lot of that kind of play has been lost, I feel. Because a lot of modern wargamers, because I hang around that crowd a lot, they seem to have forgotten this old school, which it really is an old school concept of mixing some of the storytelling and role playing elements. Not all of them. I mean, I've played in a lot of, especially a lot of the really older guys. They still have a lot of that in their games, but I think a lot of the modern war gamers, a lot of the next generation that followed that, they approach it as just strictly, a war game, and which is fine. I mean, that's absolutely, but it seems like a lot of that storytelling element in war games has been lost. It'd be I've kind of been intrigued to kind of introduce it again in some of my war games, or even maybe possibly, um, write or play a game heavily influenced by those older style of kind of pseudo role playing war games. But yeah,
Right.
it's really interesting to hear that. Um, so going back, you were first introduced to D&D. You were talking about, of course, we all know, the white box, which I guess in your case it was probably the brown box, right?
I don't remember there was a box, honestly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was just a little 3-volume set, we called it.
Yeah.
And it was very basic.
Right. Yeah, it's very, very, very bare bones. It's actually one of my favorite versions of D&D. It's still to this day really, really intrigues me, and I play it quite a bit when I can. It's always intrigued me because of how bare it is. It's like the skeleton that you can really add whatever meat you want onto it, and it seems like you guys did, right?
Right. That was the whole thing. I mean, you had to add more. That brings up the infamous story of how I invented the thief class.
Yeah, so Darrold, when somebody recommended I should talk to you on my podcast, and I had actually interacted with you before on a forum. I think it was the OD&D 74 forum, and we were talking about the thief. and the origins of the thief, and you got involved in that conversation. It was really cool to see some of your. I think you showed some of your notes and talked about it or whatnot. But I had forgotten who you were, ironically enough. So when I forget who it was that recommended I talk to you, I was like, "Oh, Darrold, yeah." They were like, "Yeah, he's an old gamer." They didn't tell me anything about you. So when I contacted you, I was like, "What do you want to talk about?" You're like, "Well, how about that I invented the thief?" And I was like, "Oh." Anyway, it's kind of a funny little side note, but yeah, so you're kind of credited with inventing the thief class, which personally is one of my favorite character classes.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about how that came about.
Okay. Now, back in the days, what we did is we started everyone with a second level character because clerics couldn't cast any spells until second level. I figured everyone should have a second level character. Everyone should have 2 first level henchmen. So if you had a big group of people, like 5, 6 players, you wouldn't take your henchman along, or maybe take one. It was like a 1 or 2 player game, and you'd show up with your henchman.
Interesting.
So remember, it was 3d6. Roll in order and decide what class you're playing after you get the stats. And sure, we were reasonable. If you rolled up, total crap,
Yeah,
would be allowed to re-roll. But still, it was 3d6 in order. That was your character. Bing, bang, boom. And, if you have a high int, you're a wizard. Strength, you're a fighter. That was it.
yeah.
And this one guy named Andy, he's a lawyer. He was a lawyer. I don't know his last name. I don't know if he's still alive. But he was in law school at the time. And he rolled up his character and turned out to be a wizard. Very low strength, obviously. Nice intelligence.
Yeah.
And he wanted 2 dwarf henchmen. A lot of people pick dwarfs as henchmen because you could see in the dark, etc.
Right.
Rolls up as henchmen, and both the henchmen, by some odd chance, have low strength. Okay, no big deal back in those days. Stats weren't that critical.
Yeah.
So anyway, he's playing in my dungeon, just himself and his 2 henchmen. And they run into a door, and they try to bust open the door. And that requires a roll. You get bonuses from strength. It's compared to your strength.
Right.
There's 2 guys who didn't do it. And he was getting frustrated. He says, well, wait a minute. My henchman here, he's got a dex of 17. However, he takes a dagger and tries to hack the lock.
Mm.
Oh, I'm going, sure, why not?
Yeah.
Oh, and okay, so make a roll. I don't remember what the roll was. Just roll high, and he rolled high. I don't know what he rolled. He rolled high. Picked the lock. So he says, that's great. I want my guy, be able to do this. And other people are going, yeah, we need this. So I drew up this little thief class. It's only like 5 levels to start.
Right.
Obviously, Dex was the important characteristic. It fought like a cleric, but had no spells. What I gave him is that you would have abilities, skills, like a wizard had spells.
Yeah.
First level, you could pick from like 5 or 6 of these, and one of them would be pick locks. And then you could pick a lock. Assuming the dungeon master might say, oh, well, you need some tools or whatever. We all play fast and loose that stuff.
Yeah.
And then one was, detect traps or disarm traps, disarm magical traps, etc. Went on for like 5 levels. The abilities being quite similar, getting the abilities, much like wizards got spells.
Right.
So get 1 at first level at second level, first at a second at third level. Wildly popular. I mean, everyone had to have one of these guys. Those days were full of devious, diabolical, Gygaxian traps. Not
Yeah.
the traps nowadays they have where you fall into a pit, you take some damage, they dust you off, they heal you up, you move on. I mean, traps where you'd be teleported and you'd be in a room naked and all your stuff would be in another room, or you'd be your alignment be switched, or you'd be transformed to a monster or whatever.
Yeah.
You didn't just power through traps those days. Besides that, if you did, you know, you'd break chests full of potions and whatnot. And so the thief was a necessity.
Right.
We loved it, and I think I went out and expanded it for 10 levels, and people started playing as a class. Barry Switzer, who owned Arrow Hobbies, thought it was very cool, and he called Gary Gygax long distance and sent Gary a copy of it. Gary Gygax wrote about it in a little newsletter with basically sort of the one I drew up, but a little bit different. And then he rewrote it entirely for Greyhawk with, you know, percentage goals for skills and stuff. So his first version just put out the little newsletter, quite a bit similar to the original Thief. And his second version had the same concept and all that, but a different way of going at the skills entirely. Something that some people like, because if you were a first level human thief and you didn't have a lot of dexterity, the chance of doing stuff was pretty low.
Right.
Incidentally, Illusionist Investment Group called Jared Daniel Nielsen is doing a Kickstarter on, and one of the things he's bought for me is a reversion of the original Thief class. So that will be cool when we see that.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's fantastic. So you were talking about. I'm imagining your thief class was quite a bit different from what Gary extrapolated.
Oh yeah, it was. I saw the one-page one he did. That looked a lot like my Thief class. But then the one in Greyhawk was quite a bit different. I mean, it still was the Thief class. It still had the same skills.
Right.
It just did an entirely different system.
So what was your system for the thief skills? Just out of
Well, yeah,
curiosity.
but you'd have at first level, you'd get one ability, like a wizard spell.
Right.
And you pick a list of like 6 of them. And let's assume the first one you pick would be pick locks.
Yeah.
You could just do that.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You wouldn't need to roll anything. You just did it.
Very cool.
Charm traps, you just do it. Charm magical traps is a higher level one. Just do it. Hide in shadows, etc. All these are just abilities. Just do, just like a wizard would cast a spell. Just did it. You have to roll to do it. You just did it.
So could you only do it a certain amount of times per day, kind of like a wizard, or was it just you
Oh,
could
you could do it unlimited. That was the different thing. You had you could pick locks. You could pick locks all day. Like I said, you know, some of the dungeons. I think one of them was a magic locks. That was a second level one, or maybe that was third level. One was open weird puzzle locks, like with combination locks. Was a higher level one. As long as you had a hole and you had lock picks, you could pick that. You just did it, and that was it. You just did it.
Yeah, that's very cool. That's a very radical idea, actually. To be honest, I've never even seen anyone suggest that kind of thing for the thief. I've seen all sorts of variants for the thief, but that's probably the most interesting one I've ever heard of.
It makes sense why the game with dice rolls. All he's doing is just picking locks for chests and doors and stuff like that. You know, that's the kind of thief he is. If he's a boxman type thief, he just does it. And
Yeah.
like I said, the dungeon master could require him, to have a set of lock picks and and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He just did it. And of course, the halfling, aka the hobbit, was just about the most common thief because they weren't very good in original Dungeons and Dragons, and this gave us a chance to play one like Bilbo and have a good time playing a burglar.
Mm-hmm.
I
very
think
cool.
open locks, find traps, disarm traps, pickpockets, hide in shadows. These are all basic things you could do.
Yeah, so it's interesting to hear you talk about because I did some research all week and I've been thinking about the thief all week leading up to this conversation. And especially today, I was just mulling around on it at work while I was doing monotonous things. And I was going to ask you what your inspiration for the thief was, and I kept imagining it was going to be something very different from what you explained to me. But it's interesting to hear you say that the inspiration for the class came out of actual play. I find that really fascinating. I was kind of imagining you were going to tell me that it kind of came from, Bilbo Baggins from The Hobbit, or the Gray Mouser from the Fritz Leiber Tales. But it seems that it's really cool that it just came out of natural play. Somebody was like, "Hey, I want to try to do this. I want to do this. I want to play this kind of character," and you were like, "Okay," and you just rolled with it, which I think is one of the big differences in old school role playing games, right? Because they are so rules light and loose. Um, that's something I really like about it is people tend to just be a lot more creative, because they don't have a lot of special abilities and skills and stuff to lean on. They have to come up with really creative ideas, and then from there you can actually create rules from those creative ideas. So it's kind of cool to hear that.
Right. And of course, Gygax gave me no credit. I don't know what he knew about involvement. I mean, he gotten it from Gary Switzer. I don't know what Gary Switzer told him as to who did it. I was not part of that teleconference, obviously.
Right.
And I didn't even know Gary had done that until The Thief came out and got some sort of word back that, it came from West Coast. Although I don't know, necessarily at that point in time whether it came from here or not. But John, who wrote A Plane at the World, The Big History of Dungeons & Dragons,
Right.
managed to unearth that newsletter and showing it came from Gary Switzer of Arrow Hobbies. And I went, okay, so that was my thief. And, this looks just like my thief.
Huh.
So John Peterson then said, yeah, makes you the inventor of the thief class. And, I always knew I'd written one up, on my own.
Right.
I wasn't sure it was the one that Gary Gygax stole.
That's interesting. So this is really just a recent discovery for you. That's really cool.
Very
Yeah,
recent.
yeah. John Peterson. I've never talked to him personally. I'd love to have him on, or even just have a chat with him. He seems like a really interesting guy.
Yes.
About a year ago, I read "Playing at the World." I highly recommend it to anybody that's interested, like me, in the history of Dungeons and Dragons and role playing. It's a really, really good book. It's probably the best book on the subject I've read. About everything I get my hands on about it. It's probably the best, most authoritative um, book on the subject. It's really well written. John put a lot of effort and research into it, and he's a really, really interesting guy. And it's great that a guy like him was around and took the time and energy to spend so much time researching it and talking to guys like you and other guys to keep that legacy alive.
Of course, I was always in the back of my head. I was always pretty certain that my work had been the original for it. You don't go around claiming that sort of stuff until somebody else people are going to laugh at you. So if you go, ha ha, but I always thought I was, and my friend Hugh and stuff, they are co-writers of the manual. I was probably me, but don't claim it until someone else comes out and gives you the credit for it. Now, even I'm on Wikipedia as the inventor of the thief class. That's good.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so the thief is kind of only in recent years, it seems, has become kind of a controversial class amongst some of the old school community. Um, I've never felt, again, it's one of my favorite character classes. Last episode we were talking about the bard, and it's a controversial class now too for some reason. Again, one of my other favorite character classes. Um, but the thief, it's controversial for a lot of different reasons. I think one of them is the fact that it brought the skills. So the skills, some people feel, I don't feel this way, but some people feel that the thief skills introduced an element that tore away some of the creativity from original D&D. How do you feel about that?
Well, if you had done it the way I did it, I think it would have been much more in line with Dungeons and Dragons. I think that going the way Gygax put it into a bunch of skills and stuff. So I think Gygax went down, it's hard to accuse the guy who first wrote down Dungeons and Dragons as doing something wrong, but I think that's a mistake he made. I think if he had gone with my original system, I think it would have been the best way of doing it.
Yeah, because when you look at some of the earlier editions, when you see the thief and you see all of a sudden it's jarring that you've got all these percentages, it's very different than all the other classes.
Like,
Yeah, it is, and it also brings up another criticism of it. It brought up a real big criticism of D&D, which especially old school D&D, which lasts even to this day. I treat this a little bit differently than most people do, and I feel like it's up for interpretation. But a lot of people say, well, the thief is the only one that can, hide, or the thief is the only one that can pick locks, and blah blah blah. I don't treat it that way in my games personally, and Chase plays in my games. He can attest to it that I treat the thief skills as sort of a saving throw. Anybody can pick a lock, anybody can climb surfaces, but only the thief can climb sheer surfaces. Only the thief can pick any lock. Only the thief can hide in shadows. Anybody can hide, but the thief can hide in shadows. So that's where I kind of that's my interpretation of the thief. I feel like his thief skills are a really special abilities that are unique to him. It's anybody can do those things, but he can do it on another level.
right. And that's how it started. If you had, a guy with enough decks and he had a dagger or some tools, and it was, one of the simple kind of locks, the kind of locks that now we could, I could pick personally with a paper clip. Sure, just roll for it. But once you get in the more difficult locks, traps, you'd have to see the trap somehow, looking for it, and then tell the dungeon master how you're disarming it or going around it. And so you'd have to be very inventive there. Whereas the thief would I disarm the trap.
Right. Right.
There's something to be said for both ways. Sure. But I think my system actually worked better. There's no skills then. It's like a spell, but a spell you could do over and over again. And it made the thief pretty well, but he was also a quite decent fighter. My guy, he was couldn't wear the heavy armor, obviously.
Yeah.
Didn't use halberds and stuff. He was a fairly decent fighter, and so that was very useful. In a party. The monsters came out, and of course he had his backstab ability.
Yeah.
So Thief was a real necessity in early days of Dungeons and Dragons because traps weren't just, oh well, make a saving throw. Oh, okay, you take 5d6 of damage.
Right.
Okay, the cleric heals me. All right, we go on. That's something they lost. Third edition, Pathfinder, 5th edition, they've all lost that. Those Tomb of Horrors style traps. Sure, some of the Tomb of Horrors traps, do this and you're just dead. That's rough. We didn't do those kind of stuff. I mean, I do remember the trap that, if you didn't disarm it right, you went into one room and you were naked and all your gear went to another room and you had to figure a way out, not having any gear, etc. So we're tougher back in those days.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just the style of play in general, which I quite like. I like the threat of death.
Right.
Not only that, but I like the difference even up to second edition AD&D was, you really were a nobody to start off with.
Right.
You were just barely, above a farmer. You knew a little bit about how to wield the sword and wear armor and maybe cast one spell or whatever. And so you went from this great, it was great because you went really from zero to hero. Whereas opposed to nowadays, modern D&D, basically from third edition on, you start as a hero. Well, nowadays it's more like superhero and go onwards. But I really appreciate that style of play. I love it because it's so rewarding to really start as a nobody and to survive and work your way up. And you really, I feel like the rewards are really worth it. I feel like you really get invested in this character. And it's a really fun and rewarding experience that I feel like most modern players are not going to be able to experience.
I mean, our games weren't, killer. We didn't have killer DMs, but your lower levels, a lot of characters died. I mean, they just died.
Yeah.
And once you got to be, a character got to be a favorite, we would try to go out of the way to make sure you didn't lose your favorite character, unless you did something really stupid, of course. And of course, then there was Raised Dead and stuff like that.
Sure.
And sometimes we would do that. Someone's favorite character would die, and we go on a big quest, go visit the bishop someplace, get a Raised Dead cast for this character because none of it, we were all 5th level or something. We couldn't cast Raised Dead. And that would be another fun campaign. 3-4 nights of overland traveling using the outdoor survival map. Get to visit the bishop and get, Raised Dead thrown on our character.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, like that's the other thing is I don't think a lot of modern players understand, and especially DMs, feels like we have a shortage of good game masters nowadays. Is that you can create an adventure out of anything. Just that small thing right there. A player died. Okay, we need to go raise this player from the dead. All of a sudden, right there, you've got a little mini campaign, right? Um, and that's something that I think most game masters need to realize is you can create an adventure out of just about anything. Just any little thing you can spark an adventure out of.
I mean, I'm good at doing stuff on the fly.
Yeah.
My counterpart, Dale Doan, he was known for being much more strict. His dungeon was extremely convoluted and full of tiny little corridors. And he actually could print in such a way that it actually looked like almost like typewriting. I had this illegible scrawl. So our dungeons were quite a bit different. But yeah, I was like Arneson. I played with Arneson once.
Yeah.
Rules are there as a vague guideline. You make up stuff on the fly. If you need a new monster, just make up the stats in your head right then. That's what we did. We made up a lot of new monsters, a lot of new classes, which is going to bring us to our next thing when you're ready for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I do want to move into that. But yeah, that's funny you say that, Darrold. That's exactly the kind of game master I am. You know, I certainly have been doing it as long as you. I'm almost half your age, but um, you know, I've been doing it for a long time. And when I first started doing it, I tried to be because I emulated what other game masters were doing that I saw, and they seemed to be really precise and plan everything out. And so that's what I used to do, and it never really worked for me. I could never really stick to that because my head goes all kinds of places. And so the past 10 years, I've just given into my impulses, which is really just to create things on the fly. And, you know, not everybody can do it, and I understand. But I really enjoyed that style, and I really enjoy it when other people can do it too. But yeah, I do want to move on to that. So as I understand it, you were the first person to create a third party product for D&D, correct?
Manual of Aurania. Back in the early 70s, he wrote this little thing, and our introduction says, playing many games of Dungeons & Dragons and Aero Hobbies and Environs, came up with many types of new monsters, characters, and treasures. Many of these were forgotten, perhaps deservedly so. Several outside stolen, soon appeared in print. Hint, hint. Hint, I'm adding that. Let this happen again. We began a collection of these figments of our imagination. Prime selection of this collection is here, provided for use and hopefully reading pleasure. To give you some idea of where these ideas sprang from, Urania is a universe of around 10 or so dungeons, of which only 3 are commonly used, even more players. Urania, by the by means place of gold, reference to the large pile of the stuff collected by the player characters in early campaigns. Particular interpretation of the rules are rather different. This has been confirmed to most systems. Feel free to change or modify your own system. You're going to anyway, so I might as well tell you can. After response to our first edition and the welcome it received, after much long debate on how this manual should be presented, we come to this edition for your enjoyment. It contains the same materials as the first edition, in addition to some superb illustrations by Miss Troy L. Hughes and Miss Amy Carcliffe. That's by K. Singh, was editor-in-chief. I did the cover. D. Daniel Wagner, that's me, the main contributor. Larry Steele, he did the typing and some contributions.
Awesome. So it was more a kind of a periodical, correct? Like a magazine.
It's 8.5 by 11. It's about how many pages is it? It's 30 odd pages. Illustration on most of the pages. Some pages have just illustration. Illustrations are well, I have to say, better than the 3-volume set.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things I actually have never heard of, and pretty odd for me, because I really dig deep into this kind of stuff, and I had never heard of this until you mentioned it. And I tried to dig it up online. I couldn't even find a PDF floating around or anything. I'm probably gonna have to dig deeper. Actually, I kind of want a physical copy now for the collection. Um, but did you guys do only one issue, or did you have multiple issues?
Well, it was not an issue. It was actually that was a game supplement.
Yeah. Yeah.
This was the one issue with 2 editions. It was apparently worth like $500, and I don't even have one myself.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Although really the second edition is better.
Yeah.
First edition we had like 200 or 300 copies of. Second edition we had over 3,000 copies of. So the Warehouse down in Long Beach was our main distributor, but Tibbetts and a few other people also distributed it. It sold at $3 each. We sold several thousand of them. I was the guest of honor at a DungeonCon because of it. We were mildly famous, but very mildly.
Yeah. So how did this come about? What was the origins?
We'd already been buying up these monsters and, like, the thief class, right?
Right.
And other classes besides the thief class. And we saw, of course, the thief class appear in Greyhawk. We went, well, that might be ours. And so we decided we were going to come up and publish it first, like I said, by introduction. And we were going to put all our monsters together. A couple of them had been stolen and put into Alarms and Excursions. The Caltech people stole a couple of them. By stole, I mean, let's we were all together in one big community. So borrowed might be a better term than stole. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so we decided, let's just put it all out and copyright it and put our names on it, and then everyone will know we did these classes and these monsters, and then go for it. And we made a few bucks too. I mean, back in those days, I think each one of the three of us cleared like $1,000, which certainly
that's pretty decent.
Petty change, any means.
Yeah. What year was this? What year did this?
1972, I think.
You say 72?
Yeah, the first edition had the.
So it predated D&D, huh?
No, 1977. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, I was like, wow, this. Okay, 77. All right.
And D&D came out in 1970, I think. Anyway, this came out right after Greyhawk.
Came out pre-Greyhawk?
Right after Greyhawk.
Oh, right after Greyhawk. Okay. So did Greyhawk kind of inspire you guys? Well, I mean, was it one of the inspirations for you guys to do this, or?
It definitely was. It definitely was. Greyhawk came out in 1975.
Right.
Definitely seeing Greyhawk and seeing, my thief class there, and a monster or two that we had done. Or, they may have done it themselves. I mean, these are monsters we mostly took from like a Spriggan and and some like mostly monsters we took from mythology. So, I mean, just because we come up with a Spriggan from mythology or a Perryton doesn't mean someone else can't come up with it, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
We saw our stuff there and we said, hey, let's publish it and let's make a few bucks. And for the first edition, I actually had free access to a copier, so it was pretty well all profit. And the first edition was, 200 copies, 300 copies, all sold out very quickly. Then a couple of, bigger people like the Warehouse in Long Beach and stuff, Steve Lucky, said they'd be interested in distributing it. So we went ahead and actually had professionally printed, I think it was 3,000 copies. I don't remember exactly. And that was it.
Yeah. So it was pretty well received at the time, huh?
Yeah. I mean, there was a review of it and a what's the name of that company now? Games Workshop. Back in the days that they were a real war game company.
Yeah.
They had their own magazine, and there was a review of it when they used to review stuff besides their own products.
Right. White Dwarf.
Yeah. So I was reviewing there, but it didn't get a very good review. No, and I can't entirely blame them. It was, its quality is about that of Greyhawk or the 3-volume set. So, I mean, there's some typos. Illustrations are better than the 3-volume set, I have to say, because some of those are really, really bad. But in fact, the inside cover illustration, Cleric of Thor confronting the Wraith, I think is quite a bit better than anything in the 3-volume set.
So, did you guys publish anything else after the Chronicles of Aurania or Aurania?
He wrote up Librum of Aurania.
Yeah.
And wrote it up, and Troy and a little bit less Amy illustrated it. I have the proofs here someplace, but we got in an argument over we didn't have it professionally typed again, and Hugh was not happy with the typing quality, which was just about the same level as the manual. Larry Steele, bless his heart, certainly not a professional typist.
Sure.
And so argument was whether or not we needed to hire a professional typist or print now, and we never got around to printing it. Now I unearthed it, and I've sold it to the guys at General Neeson and all that, the guys at Illusionist people, and they have bought it, and they are going to print the that as part of the Kickstarter coming up. So that should be fun.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm excited to see it. As well as the original Thief class. That really has me intrigued. Yeah, so did you ever write anything else? Just even for your own personal use?
Well, I wrote a game review column for the local war game company, Sparta International, which was pretty popular back in those days, for their monthly zine. Every war game club had a zine. International, being bigger than most, had a pretty big zine. So I wrote their game review column. They named it the Wagnerian View. That was not my idea, folks.
Awesome.
And PSR and the Dragon sent me a letter saying they'd love for me to do a game review column.
Yeah.
And I sent them all my copies, and they said, great, but here's what we need, da-da-da-da-da-da, and they wanted me to type it. And at that time, my typing was 0, and I was going to college. I just didn't have the time to type it. So that fell through. Now, my full-time profession is I was working for the U.S. Treasury Department as a money laundering investigator. So I've written manuals and procedures and stuff for a money laundering investigation. But that's entirely different. That's nothing anyone else would ever read.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of funny, though, that's kind of what you do for a living now. And back then, you were completely unskilled at it, right? Have you ever thought about now writing any other games or game supplements or anything?
No, the thing is, like a lot of people don't realize, it's a lot more work and a lot less money than people think.
It is.
Gygax happened to hit gold and got rich very, very briefly.
Yeah.
Lost everything. The guys down at Pathfinder, etc., they're, scrabbling for every buck they can get. So there's just not real money in it. And to me, it's more work than, I come up with the ideas, but, putting them down on paper and then repeatedly running them through and check for typographic errors and all that sort of stuff. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, well, I think the old school community would definitely love to see even some, little tidbits from a legend such as yourself.
So, the Legion's Investment Group bought 2 character classes from me. One was the original Thief, and another character class that I had designed and was in the manual, the Cleric of Life, basically. Cleric of Mitra, Cleric of Life.
So what are you doing nowadays as far as gaming
Nowadays,
goes?
I'm semi-retired. I'm working from home. I play some games on the computer. Not very much. I haven't found much work in my selected field around here, so I'm doing a little bit of consulting and stuff.
So you don't do any tabletop gaming anymore?
Yes, indeed. Thank you. I was glad to ask that. Yes, I thought about it professionally. Yes, indeed. As a matter of fact, I found a group out here, and I dug out my original dungeon from 1974, 73, the first dungeon possibly on the West Coast. And I'm running them through it in Pathfinder on Friday nights, although, of course, we've taken a hiatus due to COVID. But
Right.
they're running through one of the most historical dungeons of all time, short of, say, Greyhawk or Blackmoor. And they're having a great old time. Of course, I have to convert a lot of stuff on the fly.
Right.
So,
Well, that's cool.
I have a good time running them every Friday night. I also have a group down in Royal Grande that we game, but we play a lot of. We don't play much Dungeons and Dragons. We play a lot of Call of Cthulhu, World of Darkness, stuff like that.
Oh, really? You're in the World of Darkness, huh? That's cool. Yeah, World of Darkness is one of my favorite. Next to D&D, I would say it's kind of neck and neck for me with favorite role-playing games.
We have a DM that likes that game, and I have a character in that campaign. That group has been going on since the 70s, and so we've been around that group for almost as long as the original Urania group.
That's awesome. That's really cool to hear. So yeah, so you're running Pathfinder now, huh? That's kind of surprising to hear. How do you like that?
Well, the thing is of course, we played Dungeons and Dragons, and we played AD&D, also known as First Edition, and of course Second Edition. There's almost no difference between First Edition and Second Edition, really.
No.
You could take a First Edition character and play with it in Second Edition, and everything would be fine. Some of the spells changed wording, some of the classes, but it's almost the same. Well,
Yeah.
then we came out, of course, with Third Edition, which no one liked, really. But then they came out with 3.5, and everyone wanted to play 3.5. I was playing 3.5. Now, personally, I prefer the freewheeling Second Edition, AD&D, than the old stuff about maneuver and flanking and attacks of opportunity. All that stuff, in my mind, slows the game down.
I agree. Yep.
That's the way they wanted to go because of online gaming and stuff like that. So I was playing 3.5. Pathfinder came out right after they decided to dump 3.5 and go to Fourth Edition. So I picked up Pathfinder, naturally. And Pathfinder and 3.5 are the systems I am most used to playing. I can do them without thinking about the rules. I played a few Fifth Edition. I like the idea, but I consider it kind of a D&D light.
Right, very accurate description.
It's very popular among the newcomers, though, because the rules are much more simpler than 3.5 or Pathfinder. So I don't knock it. I played it, but I don't have any campaigns in it or anything like that. And I'd love to have a campaign, second edition campaign or AD&D campaign. But there just aren't any around here. OD&D to me is just a little bit too far back in time to do do a campaign with OD&D. But certainly AD&D is a really fun system.
Yeah. So what's your favorite iteration?
I'd have to say Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, just second edition. I thought that was my favorite of all time.
Awesome. Yeah, that's kind of cool to hear, especially from an older guy, because second edition really has a place in my heart. Of course, I'm a younger guy. That's where I started at, was second edition, and it's still one of my favorite editions. Even though I like them all and I play them all, each edition to me kind of has a different flavor, And I kind of, when I start a new campaign, I kind of pick whatever kind of flavor I'm feeling,
Yeah, AD&D is what OD&D should have been, with all the rules clarified and all the classes and everything brought in. Way it should have been from the beginning, really, if it had a chance to. I don't really like the maneuver rules and the endless thing of you move there, you get an attack of opportunity and stuff like that. I don't care for that, but that's just what is. And of course, they kind of have that in 5th edition, what with their advantage and stuff. So you have to learn that. Do you have advantage or not? We just didn't bother with that back in those days. We generally only bothered with like a party and a party order if you were in a dungeon, so if the monsters attack from the back or the front in a 5-foot wide corridor. It was theater of the mind a lot. We could play an entire game without even rolling dice if we had to, just talking in character. It was just
that's kind of interesting. Let's visit that for a minute. I don't mean to interrupt you, but this is kind of a controversial thing in the old school community too, and I don't agree with it because I've always done it. Is this heavy role play kind of storytelling element of Dungeons and Dragons? A lot of the old school guys tell me they didn't play that way. Well, I beg to differ because I've met a lot of guys like you that did. So tell us a little bit about that style, and were you guys talking in character and role playing and stuff even back at the beginning?
Well, not really back at the beginning. Back at the beginning, it was more somebody might have a funny accent or buy Grabthar's hammer or something like that. Their character did. I played Father Kirkman, and he's always going, "Blessings upon you, my son, and blessings upon you." Whack.
Right.
Little stuff like that. But I don't know if you've heard of Corey and Laurie Cole. They have designed a lot of computer games. So You Want to Be Hero and stuff.
No, I never heard of them.
They were part of our second generation of gaming group. When I moved to Silicon Valley.
Okay.
And so Lori used to write the stories. So we would go to their house and they live out now in Oakhurst, California. And we would go there for a weekend of gaming. And, we just have, a game which is all in character, no combat necessary, maybe one combat to the ultimate combat or something like that, where it's all leading up to. And we would do, that was second edition. So that was great. And we'd have games often. Back in those days, you would have a lot of games we called pickup games, where somebody would say, "Hey, I got an idea for a 3-night thing, and bring in a character around 7th level who hates elves." Okay,
right.
So we'd all dig through our portfolio of characters and find someone who hated elves, but wasn't an elf or anything, or maybe a renegade elf or something. Come up with someone 5th, 6th, or 7th level, and we'd all set off on a 2 or 3 night mini game, mini campaign, or whatever you want to call it, and have a great deal of fun with it. And that's the thing about 2nd edition. The classes weren't so different and all that, and the magic items weren't so structured that you could play a character from a different campaign and just have fun with them, and you don't have to worry about, oh, does he have 40,000 gold pieces worth of magic items or something. That wasn't necessary. You just, here's my character. Okay, good. Let's play for him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, a lot of. I don't know. 2nd edition's kind of it's almost the redheaded stepchild of D&D editions. A lot of the old school community hates it. The new school community hates it, but there's this group of guys um, that still really love it. I'm definitely one of those. You seem to be, which is awesome to hear. I thought it was a great iteration of D&D. It's still one of my favorites. I still love to play it. So yeah, going way back, I want to touch on this a little bit. Is wargaming? Do you still wargame any?
No, not really. I have played a few war games. The thing is, I really don't like what Games Workshop has done to the industry.
Yeah,
I consider Games
me either.
Workshop it's an unethical gaming company.
Mm-hmm.
They've been sued for their unethical business practice,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
constantly rip off their customers. Okay, fine. Do your great army. Oh, okay. Well, here's the next edition. That army is worthless, and here's the new army you have to buy. Otherwise, you can't win. And the young guys love that. And I've never seen a female player in it. I'm sure there are some, but it's just a very machismo type game that people like, and that's about what you can find in wargaming nowadays. That is taken over to such a large extent. Now they have another game which is playing with 25 millimeter World War II miniatures. That looks a lot of fun. I've seen some of that. I helped play a little of it, but I don't have the figures for it anymore or anything.
Right.
So I play some war games on the computer. The thing is you can play a nice war game on the computer.
Yeah, you can, but it's not the same as having a group of guys around, having a beer or a cup of coffee and hanging out, around the table for 4 to 6 hours or whatnot, and shooting the shit and having a good time. I still play war games pretty heavy. I mainly do historical games. I'm lucky enough that we have a really strong community, or stronger than most communities of historical gamers here, and we play we play everything from ancients to medieval to American Civil War to Napoleonics, and we run a convention here that's been going on for 30 years, and still try to keep that legacy alive. But yeah, Games Workshop. You were talking about Games Workshop. It's a company that I love and hate. Back in the day, I really loved them. They started off as such a great company, but back in the day, they were a company that was started by gamers, right? They were all gamers, and they were gamers. They were passionate about games and made great games, great miniatures, great everything. And then, of course, I guess around the late 90s, early 2000s, they kind of went public, and all those guys that previously worked for the company, or at least 99.9% of them, are gone now. And it's not even the same company anymore. And it's unfortunate. And it's also unfortunate that they're the leader of the industry, in my opinion, because there's so much to offer, and there's still a lot of great war games out there, and it's better than ever because people, especially with Osprey kind of taking up the slack, they're publishing all kinds of indie miniature games and stuff that are just absolutely great. And yeah, so, it's we were talking about this, when was that, Chase? I guess 2 episodes
That's right.
ago, about yeah, we were talking about the wargaming roots and role-playing games because 'cause I'm really passionate about both, and, historical wargaming especially is something is an aspect of the hobby I don't wanna see fade away, but unfortunately, it really is fading away, but there is still is community for it, and I hope it stays alive.
And now we do play board games. I mean, my Friday night group, we used to have a Wednesday night gaming board game group, and we'd play a lot of war games, so, and some of them, of course, are semi role playing and stuff. So, yeah, board games is, still there, and board games are great and stuff like that. But like I said, uh, Games Workshop has a lot to answer for in kind of ruining. I mean, if you're going to play a medieval war game now, it's all those ridiculously overdone 35 millimeter figures they came out with, which don't resemble, real armies at all.
Yeah.
Hate to get on a rant here, but
No, rant all you want, please, and one thing I do wanna mention, though, Daryl, is there is some of the aspect of the hobby that's being kept alive. I don't know if you've heard of, Gripping Beast has Saga, which is a, ancients and medieval rule set. It's a skirmish game, and it's actually fairly popular, which is great, and of course,
sure,
you were just talking about, Bolt Action, Warlord Games. They're nowhere as none of these companies are nearly as big as Games Workshop, but they are kind of a lot of the Games Workshop, fanboys or previous fanboys like me have gotten a little dissatisfied, and, a lot of people, because of the unethical treatment that Games Workshop unethical things that Games Workshop has done, you have a lot of gamers that are looking elsewhere, which is a good thing. Because
like Bold Action and stuff. That's a game done by gamers for gamers.
yeah,
Uh, People who want to make a few bucks, pay the rent, but not they're not trying to be rich off this,
no,
uh, and so and that's I like to see that. And matter of fact, Hugh Singh, he was the editor and one of the contributors to the manual. He's up there in Oregon, and he works for a company that sells little houses and brickworks and stuff like that for 15 and 25 millimeter historical war games.
oh,
So
cool.
he's still in it. He still plays war games,
Yeah,
tabletop war games. I just don't have a group around here that does it.
yeah,
I mean, when I went to Green, our local game workshop, game company, great game thing, they play a lot of Games Workshop, a lot of board games, and a lot of fifth edition.
yeah.
Pushed out, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I totally get you. I feel the same way. I still like to support the local game stores. We have about 3 of them around. It's 3 of them within a 30-minute drive of me, and I go to at least 2 of them regularly. One of them's been open for a long time. It's been open for about 30 years, and I've been going there for forever since I was a kid. And I still go there every week and play historical games, with a group of guys that been doing it there since, forever. They're a bunch of old grognards, and I still play historical games with them. The other store is it's more of a mix kind of store. It's a comic store slash game store. Um, and it's kind of the same thing. Uh, what I've tried to do, not I don't know if it's been successful or not, but what I try to do is I go up there and try to play and run and demo different types of games. I haven't done it in a while, and I need to go back and do it. As I used to go up there about once a month and do historical games, and I would just bring all my figures, all my terrain, set up a really good looking table, and just anybody that wants to play could play. And even role playing games when I go up there and which I haven't been up there in a while, but when I go up there and play role playing games, I'll play something different And one thing I have gotten, though, is every time I go out there and run a game or play a game with some other people is I always have people come up to our table and are like, "Hey, what are you guys playing? This looks awesome. You know, what is that? What is that book? Or, you know, what are these miniatures and whatnot?" And so I think that's I think that's one thing, and we've discussed this before is, you know, I think a lot of younger gamers just aren't aware of a lot of the things that are out there. And if they were exposed to it, it might be a small number, but, you know, one out of, you know, whatever, 100 or 1,000 or whatever, we might could rope in, right?
Right, right. And I will give a plug to our local Green Hour Games, where I did start out by running my campaign there, and really nice people there and stuff. It's a great gaming store. But, you know, like I said, uh, and they do play bowl action, and they do have other stuff. They have a nice gaming room and plenty of stuff, but, you know, and they have a war game, a board game night, which of course is temporarily on hiatus due to COVID and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a great store. I just don't go as much anymore. And, you know, I have my own little local gaming group, and we play. You know, right now we're playing Pathfinder. They also have one of the guys is a teacher, and he runs a little fifth edition game for the kids. So that's great.
Cool.
So
Yeah. Yeah, it's
we're
great to get the youngsters in there. I I'm not very good with kids, but I still like to see kids at the gaming table. Um, it's really awesome. We definitely need more young blood in the hobby, regardless of what the game is, you know.
one of the guys in my night game is one of the players' son, and he's a great kid, and he's a good player, and he role plays and everything. Um, so you know, it's not really the age because I actually found out really, you know, the guys who are a little bit older, like college age, they tend to be sometimes the worst players. You
Yeah.
know, whereas the young guys want to learn, want to find out how to play. They they don't think they know everything yet. Um, Whereas when you get to like 20 or something, they think they know everything, and you know, no one has anything to teach them.
Yeah, I think that's just you know, that's just 20-year-olds in general about everything, right? Um, but yeah, it's great to have kids at the table. I mean, last year I was quite surprised. We run a local convention here, and I ran some original white box D&D. I
Yeah,
did 2 sessions, and they were I mean, it was a hit. It was a huge hit. I had so many players, I had to turn people away. In fact, I had to go to the back room just so more people, would stop coming to the table. You know, so I had about, like, I don't even know, it was probably 15 plus players per session. Um, but the first session, I had a young kid come in, which I was shocked. You know, he was probably 8 or 9 years old, about the same age I was when I got into gaming. So he was more than welcome at the table, and he had never played D&D before or anything like that, and he was just absolutely, you know, it was just great to see that same experience I had as a kid, same age too, which was really cool. He was just completely just mesmerized by everything. And he even came back for the next session the next morning. And so, you know, I wasn't prepared for a kid to come. If I was, I would have had something better. But I gave him some of my miniatures. I was like, pick out a few miniatures, take them with you. And I also gave him my rule book. I had a printed out 3-ring binder version of the original D&D rules, and I gave them to him. Unfortunately, that's probably not the best thing. I wish I had something better to give him, but I was like, take this, go tell your friends, have fun, you know. But it was really rewarding to do that, and more people should definitely try to do that.
yeah, definitely. It's really important to you know, to bring the the youth in and mold their minds, so they have a bunch of moldy minds, right? So, and yeah, I taught a class in college. Matter of fact, when I was going to state university, I taught a class. Well, I was assisted the teacher. She taught a class in fantasy literature, and I came in and spent 2 days of the class running a great big giant D&D game for everyone, with I think 20 people playing. But I mean, only for like two 1 hour sessions or something. So
Yeah.
it's amazing what you can do.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I see, and yeah, there's been a big research for OD&D, which is to me kind of weird. But I think what it is that all those who played OD&D, went on to go, well, this is too simple, too simplistic, and said, okay, let's play. Let's go on to advanced Dungeons and Dragons. I'm waiting for the resurgence in AD&D, which I'm sure is going to come.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to ever see a resurgence in 4th edition, though. I'm sorry.
In what? In what?
4th edition.
4th edition?
I don't think that's ever
could
going to
hope not.
resurge. I think
No, God. Yeah, I hope not. Yeah, it's interesting that I again, I'm a younger guy. I'm in my 30s. But I've always kind of had a keen interest in history, and I've always been just a curious person, even when I was a kid. And anytime I got to get into something, even now, I want to know everything about it. And so when I got into D&D, it was the same way. I was obsessed, and I still am. It's one of those obsessions that I just never kicked. And I just wanted to know everything about it. So I had to know where, every edition. I wanted to know about 1st edition, original D&D, so forth and so forth. I got really heavy into original D&D and 1st edition. Well, original D&D I got really heavy into about 12 or 13 years ago. I had always been curious about it. I had some PDFs of it floating around, and it always looked like it was kind of a curiosity to me. But I started jumping on some forums and really, really got obsessed in OD&D and doing some. I went real deep into the white box,
Right.
and it's still holds a fascination for me. It's a really interesting addition because there's so many possibilities. That's what I love about it. You can really. It's just it's literally is, like I was saying at the beginning of the show, it's a skeleton you can build your own framework upon. And
Absolutely.
actually, yeah, and I kind of did an experiment quite a few years ago, about a decade or more. I ran a white box campaign for with one guy. It was just me and him. And what I started doing is we started introducing more and more rules on top of it. And I kind of let him. I was like, "Well, what do you want to do? What kind of character you want to play?" And he was like, "Well, I want to play like a berserker." And I was like, "Okay." So we made up a berserker class on the fly. I just started introducing more and more things, and eventually at the end of the campaign, which me and him played for quite a while. Every night after work, I'd go over to his house and we'd play for an hour or two, and we created this whole new beast. This whole new basically version of D&D, just doing that. So that was kind of an interesting little experiment, and OD&D still has kind of a special place in my heart. I really, really, it's still every time I open those, and AD&D 1st edition does too. There's something magical about it. I'm not sure what it is, but it still piques my curiosity.
It's more imagination, and that I love that about it. It's free flowing. It's imagination, theater of the mind, whatever we would call it. You don't even need a map board to play it on. It's just a great game. I think people are going to go back to. I think 2nd edition is kind of get a resurgence. I noticed the chainmail has got a resurgence, even though, heck, we played chainmail and we thought it was a lousy medieval gaming system, and we played it like once or twice, and we said this is terrible, and you
Right.
never get the results that you would expect to get with matching housecarls versus Norman knights, or English longbowmen against French knights, or anything. You never got the correct historical matchups from it because it's such a bad set of rules.
Yeah.
But hey, now it's a resurgent and people play it. More power to them.
Yeah. Chainmail. Again, that was kind of again, I've always been a miniatures enthusiast. And me and a buddy, actually our co-host on here who's not couldn't join us tonight, is Dave Ferguson. And he's a really big D&D history buff like I am. And we both go on and on about chainmail because it definitely has roots in D&D. And we've both always wanted to play it. I had never been able to talk anybody into playing it. He hasn't either. And so during the pandemic here, we actually got together and played our first game online with Tabletop Simulator. And I actually thought it was a fine set of rules. I didn't have a problem with it at all. I didn't think it was lousy. It definitely is not realistic, but it was fun for sure. I thought it was a decent set of rules. It played very well. I think we're going to try. Yeah. I thought it was fine. I really didn't have a problem with it. It's definitely a little archaic. It was a little rough around the edges, but it had some it's got some interesting little tidbits in there that I kind of liked. Um, Namely the exhaustion rules. I thoroughly enjoyed. Um, but yeah, it's got some interesting little tidbits. I definitely think it's still playable. We definitely we house ruled some things right off the bat because I've played enough miniature games. I could just read through the rules, and I was like, all right, this is going to be a little wonky. Let's change it to this or whatnot. But yeah, it was a pleasurable game. I had a lot of fun with it, and I think we're going to try some more of it. I think next time we're going to use the fantasy supplement because we were just playing straight historicals the first time around. But I thought it was fine. I had a lot of fun playing it.
I mean, and if you have fun with it, that's all that's important. It's just that we were trying to get, historical battles recreated, like the Battle of Hastings, and for that, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
So, but if you just want to play some games, it's fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Honestly, each of us had historical army. I had the 1060. I had at one time 1,000 painted Saxons.
Oh wow!
Figures, of course. That was my big army.
Yeah.
I would use that in nearly any war game system you come up with. So, it was fun. I just wanted to mention that coming out soon-ish, I guess, will be The Dreams in Gary's Basement by Pat Kilbane. I don't know if you've heard of Pat Kilbane.
No, I haven't.
He was in Mad TV and in Seinfeld, and he is got a movie he's done called The Dreams in Gary's Basement, a history of Gary Gygax's part of gaming history. And I've been interviewed for that, and I'm going to be a small point of that. So that's
awesome.
Arcs of Yore, they call it.
Yeah, I know those guys, and I've heard about the documentary. Is there an expected release date on that?
Soonish. The same thing with the World of Aurania from Illusionist Investment Group. Soonish.
Right.
So that's all I know. I am getting paid for the World of Aurania, but I will again say that this is not something we're making any money on. Even if the Kickstarter is widely successful, I think we might make $1,000 on it on our side. So we're not going to get rich off this thing. But I've seen they took Troy Locker Palmer's. Now Troy Locker Palmer, she's possibly the one of us most successful. She's originally Troy Hughes, and she's now a fairly quite successful artist for quite a few books. And they took her original illustrations and they've really spiced them up, put them in color for the Mario Bronza, and they look fabulous.
Awesome.
So this is going to be some fabulous stuff when it comes out. The World of Game Design is the name of the company. You know, hope to see it someday. And that would be, it's going to be great to see it come out. So
yeah, that's some exciting stuff. I can't wait to see both of those projects. I've definitely heard about the Dreams in Gary's Basement. That sounds like a great documentary. I just recently watched Secrets of Blackmore. Have you watched that?
oh,
Oh, you haven't seen it?
I'll put that down to watch. Where's it on?
It's on a lot of services now. I think it's on Amazon Prime. They have their own website.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Secrets of Blackmore. If you haven't
I
watched
have
it,
Amazon Prime. Yeah.
yeah, it's really good. I really enjoyed it. It's about Dave Arneson and David Wesley's group and all that, and it's really well done. They basically just left it to interviewing that whole group. Luckily, there's enough of them still around that they could tell their story. Really good documentary. I really enjoyed it. But yeah, Darrold, if you haven't checked it out, I definitely recommend it.
I haven't. I will definitely check that out. I did play briefly with Arneson in a game. I will tell you that, in my opinion, that there wouldn't have been any D&D without either one of them. They always talk about Gygax being, you know, the father, but
Right.
Arneson didn't believe in rules, really. He didn't want rules. He just
Yeah.
made up the stuff. But without him making up the stuff, there never would have been a D&D either. There had been
Correct.
nothing for Gygax to write up as rules. It still would have remained a fantasy supplement to Chainmail instead of a real game like D&D turned into. So, you know, a lot of people decry Arneson as, you know, a lesser light. But it was really necessary partnership back then, in those days, to have the guy who's all freewheeling and, you know, whatever, and the guy who is, you know, all rules oriented and write it down and let's do it that way. So
Yeah, 100%, I 100% agree with you. And I've always been aware of Arneson's part in the creation of D&D and role playing games. But yeah, it is a co-partnership. I think both of them are responsible. Um, and yeah, but I don't think Dave Arneson's gotten a lot of the credit he deserves. And I'm glad, you know, the documentary came out, so he does get. Yeah, I think a lot of people now are starting to realize.
good. I will certainly look that up. It sounds very interesting. And I was at a convention. I ran into Gygax. I asked if I could play in his game. He said, "Oh gosh, not only is it full, but it's even just watching it is full." And he says, "Oh, let me see if I can squeeze you in the Dave's game." And Dave, he had a big table too, but he didn't care. You know, he just handed me a character, and we were killer frogs, cannibal killer frogs, and you know, we had a fun few hours, and it was just. I think I kind of got my, you know, I'd already been DMing for years by the time I did that, but it was just fun to be able to game with someone like him.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I could. Well, hell, I wish I could have met either one of them. I was at a couple conventions where they were at, but I just missed them every time. And unfortunately, I never got to meet either one of them. I was lucky enough to. I never got to meet Gary or Dave personally, but I did used to email Gary back and forth back in the day. We kind of had a regular little email correspondence going in for years, and it was great. He was a really nice guy, really personable, or at least he seemed like it over the internet. But
Good.
anyways, yeah, That's really cool. You got to game with Dave Arneson.
I think I was like a level cleric or something like that, casting a cure light exploding. I don't know. I don't really remember much of it, but it was very freewheeling. And somebody brought up, well, the rules say, and Arneson just shut them down. It's not the rules. It's my game. So we were kind of playing D&D, but kind of.
Right. Yeah. It was Arneson's D&D, and that's kind of what I've always heard about Arneson. I've talked to quite a few people that have played in his games, and they say, he always runs, or especially back in the day, it was always something different.
Right.
Nobody ever saw a rule book. He was the game master, and what he said went. And if he said you had this, you had that, and that's the way it was. And he made up the rule. All the rules were basically, I'm sure he had notes and such, but
notes, and he had a couple Xeroxed off things of charts, some charts like the hits stuff, but that's basically no rules. It was just a few handy charts that Gygax had done for him, and his notes on the campaign, and that was it. Very freewheeling, very open, and I hope to sort of emulate that the way I game nowadays. If you want something, I'm going to give it to you. If your whole life's thing is to have a dire wolf as a pet, you should dire wolf somewhere along the line. If what you want, it's here to have fun.
Yeah.
And the dungeon master is there to entertain the players, and the players are there to entertain the DM, and we all have a good time and crack jokes and eat snacks and and laugh at the when people roll ones and that sort of stuff, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been going on for quite a while here. I think we're almost hitting the 2-hour mark, and that's probably a pretty good place to close out the evening.
Sure.
But just to close it out, Darrold, I want to ask you two things. Close out the evening. One, what do you think the future of gaming holds? And two, what advice do you have, since you're basically one of the original game masters?
Right.
What advice would you have for game masters out there?
I think gaming is going to split among people who are introverts and play constantly all over the computer at home, and then a bunch of people who love it as a social thing they do with their friends. I think that has a great future, and I don't think that I think that fantasy role-playing games and board games will be a big part of that, and I don't think that will disappear ever. Maybe somewhere down the line we'll be able to do it live as holograms in a world or something, possibly. But it's the social aspect of it, and I don't think the social aspect will disappear. And I think the social aspect is what makes D&D the game it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said.
And advice for Dungeon Master is buy them. You're not there you're not there to play a character in it. Never play a DMPC. Play an NPC who shows up once in a while. But you're not there to play with them. You're not their competitor. Your job is not to kill them. It's to entertain them. And of course, you have to entertain them by challenging them. There's no challenge if they don't, every so often, if beads of sweat don't break out in their foreheads because their character's down to 1 hit point, they're not having fun. But your job isn't to kill them. Your job is to have fun with them. And if you're not having fun, then you shouldn't be a DM. And that's one thing I always say. The people out there, they said I've had some offers to be a professional dungeon master. Where they pay you day in, and I go, can't. I mean, sure, I could accept, pizza, gas money or something like that. But don't charge people for dungeon mastering, because it's like charging your friends to move them on, moving day or something. It's not something not done. So that's my own box there. I guess I'm going to become slightly more famous with all this stuff because I'm one of the few people left in the of the old school. So people reaching out, looking for people from the past are going to grab me and Tim Kask and some of the other old school guys, and we're going to have a little bit of resurgence of small school flame, but that's okay either way.
Yeah, Darrold, it's I'm glad you came on. Thanks for doing this. It's been a pleasure having you. You definitely are a lost treasure to the old school community, and I've really enjoyed hearing your tales tonight. And thanks for telling us the origins of the thief and about the Manual of Aurania and all that stuff. It was really cool, man. So thanks for coming on.
Anytime.
And
when the broadcast, so I can listen to my dulcet tones.
yeah, should be up this week. This weekend, rather. It takes me about a day or two to edit all this. And I usually try to release it by Saturday or Sunday. And you're always welcome to come on in the future, even if you just want to co-host with us or just join in this conversation. That's what this podcast is all about. Just regaling about the old days and talking about old school gaming and just hanging out and having a good time. And I definitely had a good time tonight, Darrold.
And when the that company, when they come out with a movie or when they come out with the new the Kickstarter, I'll reach out to you and I'll plug the Kickstarter. Although I will point out it's not my Kickstarter. I mean, I'm getting a little bit of the money from it, but I'm not. This is not making me rich. It's making another company rich. They've just bought my name, but yeah, I'm going to get a little kickback from it, which is great, and I appreciate them. So
yeah, that is great. And when that happens, we'll definitely have you back on, and maybe we can get those guys on, and we can talk all about it.
yeah.
I'm definitely excited to see it.
Daniel Nielsen.
Okay.
Daniel Nielsen. He's on Facebook, and reach out to him.
All right, definitely will. But Darrold, thanks again for coming on. Chase, thanks for joining me. Unfortunately, we don't have Dave tonight, but maybe we'll have him back next week. This has been the Grognard Grumbles. So we have just started a BX campaign, running through some classic modules. We kicked it off, introduction, Keep on the Borderlands, the other night. We didn't stream that one, but we will be streaming, or at least recording the next one. So stay tuned for that. And the intrepid adventurers will be going through the Keep of the Borderlands, as well as some other classic adventure modules. But this has been the Grognard Grumbles, the Grognard Gamers. And thanks for everybody coming on. Darrold, thanks for having you again.
Anytime.
And everybody have a good night.
Bye.
Night.